Hello class, welcome to week 2 of programming logic with Python. So instead of the typical going over the PowerPoint like we did for the first week and then going over the labs, I figured we could kind of just go straight to the labs. I feel like it might be more beneficial to practice the hands-on rather than me dictating the PowerPoint to you. I think you guys can do that at your own pace. And we can just kind of go over the labs here. That way, if you guys have any questions while you're doing the homework, you guys can just reference these videos. So I have the first lab open. I opened the wrong lab. So let's go to 2.1a. Okay. So the first lab is relatively easy. It's just they want you to output an equation to Python, and the way you do this is with anything with Python. If you want to output something to the terminal, you're going to use print statements. So they're not asking us to declare any variables or anything like that. They just want us to output this exact expression to Python for the user to get the actual result of the equation. So to do that, Python will calculate it for you, and Python does follow PEMDAS, but we just need to tell Python which equations or which numbers we want to be calculated first, and we do that with sets of parentheses. So since we have a long equation and we do have a fraction within our equation, we want to be careful where we put our parentheses, because that's going to affect the result of the arithmetic equation. So because we're just doing a print statement, we'll just write print, and we'll create our first set of parentheses, but these parentheses belong to print. They don't belong to any set of numbers within the equation, just print. So the equation starts with 3, so we'll just do 3. We're going to use a multiplication symbol because we are multiplying 3 by the result of 9 minus 2. But because 9 minus 2 is within its own set of parentheses, we do have to state that in our print statement. Parenthesis 9 minus 2, and then we close that specific set of parentheses. And now I'll just do space. I'll do plus. And now we have the big division. We have 24 divided by the fraction of 6 over 3. So there's going to be a couple set of parentheses here. The first set of parentheses will encompass 24 divided by 6 over 3, but we also have to give 6 over 3 its own set of parentheses because it is a fraction. And to write the fraction in our code, that's how we do it. So we'll start with our first set of parentheses of 24 to divide, and now we're going to create another set of parentheses, but this set is for the fraction of 6 over 3. So now we will do, let me just move this one to the right just so I'm not getting super confused. Okay, so here after the second set of parentheses on the far right, we're going to multiply that by 3, and what we can do as well is we can also put a whole set of parentheses around everything. And the reason we do that is not that it's super needed, but just so that we're not, if we had more stuff on the right, it would get confusing. Like say we had this part of the equation stays the same, 24 divided by the fraction of 6 over 3 times 3. But say we had plus 2 as well. Or say we had times 3. If we didn't have this set of parentheses, it would do 3 times 3, which would be 9, and then it would multiply it by the fraction. We don't want it to do that, so that's why it's kind of important just to put this. It's not super needed. We'll still get the same result either way, but it's good practice. So now we'll run the code, and I'll show you that both ways, with this set of parentheses, without it, it'll work. And I'll run it again without that extra set of parentheses. We get the same result, but like I said, just so that we're really encompassing this side of our code, that way nothing escapes this side because it's so clustered, I'm going to give it a second set of parentheses. But that's basically it. That's all they're asking. So let's go to lab 2. So lab 2, we're going to use a couple different functions. We're going to use the the int function. Oh, what happened here? Close activity. Okay, we'll just wait for it to load. So we're going to use the int function. The int function takes like any user string, or it takes any string and returns the string as an integer. And the int input, which is what I have here, this right here, the int input will we use this when we want to get an input that can only be a number. So like if we're asking the user, please input, if we give them a phrase like please input the number of days driven, this function right here will make sure that the user can only input a number, an integer. So we're going to use that in our code, but I'm going to delete this for now. So using different arithmetic operators, so the aim of this is to write a script that takes user input as days and converts the days into years, weeks, and days, and then prints them out. We can ignore leap years. The aim of this activity is to use different arithmetic operators to split days into years, weeks, and days. So the first thing they want us to do is to ask the user how many days they've been driving, and also declare the user input. So it's an integer, so cast a string. So we can do, we have to declare a variable, so we'll do user days driven, and then we'll equate this to we have to ask the user, so that's where we're going to use int input. These set of parentheses get created by Python by itself as you write it. It's just so now inside of here we're going to ask the user the question, or else they're not going to know what to write to the console. So here we could do days, how many days have you driven, question mark. And we can close our string there. This set of parentheses is for the input, and then this set is for the integer. So that's that. Then calculate the number of years in that set of days. Okay, so for that we do have to create, we do have to declare another variable. This one's going to be for years. It's going to represent the amount of years. So we can do like driven years, user driven years. We can do driven years. That's fine. So, and we're going to equate this to the user days driven, and we're going to do floor division here, because in case we get a decimal, that's no good, because driven years is supposed to represent the number of years. So like say the user drove 370 days. That's more than a year, and when it does do that division, it's going to give us a decimal. And we don't want the decimal. We just want to know the whole number of years, and floor division drops any numbers after a decimal point and only returns whole numbers. So that's why we're using floor division here. So we're going to do the amount of days that the user drove and we don't know that yet because that's what the user is going to input. Floor divide that by 365. That's the amount of days in the year, and that's it for that. Then they want us to convert the remaining days that were not converted to years into weeks. So for that, they're basically saying, okay, if the user drove less than 365 days, then we want to know how many weeks he drove. Because if the first line 5 will return, when we do include this in our print statement, if the user drove less than 365 days, this would return a 0. So we want to know, okay, if he didn't drive any years that year, or if he didn't drive enough days that equated to a year, then how many weeks did he drive? So that's our next variable that we want to create. So this can be driven weeks. This is a brand new variable. So for this, we're going to do user driven days, and we're going to do, oh, whoops. Hopefully it didn't erase my code. Okay. I think I refreshed the page by accident. Okay. User-driven days, and we're going to use this operator. It's called the Modulus Operator. So this gives us the remainder of division from left to right. So like user-driven days. Okay. User-driven days. Modulus. My keyboard is acting up. Give me 1 second. Okay, so user-driven days, modulus, divide that by, let's do 365, and then we'll do floor divide that by 7. And so the modulus division, let me see if I can get you guys this other screen. Do you guys see that? Okay. So say the user drove 16 days that year. If I do 16 modulo 365, it would give me 16. It gives you the remainder. It sounds confusing. You could use a calculator for that. If I were to do, let's say 75. Okay, let's do 75 module 365. It would give me 75. So it's just returning the same number, and that's because it's it's doing 75 modules 365. If I did 365 module 5, it would give me a remainder of 0 because 5 goes evenly into 365. It's just the order that I'm putting the numbers, that the reason why I'm getting the same number back, and that's important. So like say I did, let's go back to 16. So it's giving me 16 module 365 is giving me 16. Okay, that's what I put in the parenthesis, or yeah, within the parenthesis. Now I'm saying floor divide that by 7. So that should give me 2. So if I did 16 divided by 2, or 16 divided by 7, my fault, that should give me 2 point whatever. But because I did floor division, it drops all that stuff after the decimal, so it's just giving me 2. Because 7 days represents a week, so he drove 2 weeks. That's what I want. I don't want the 2 point whatever. So that's that. That's driven weeks. Now we want driven days. So to get driven days, we have to create another variable. Actually, no. It's not needed. Because we already have a variable that represents the number of days the user has driven that specific, or has driven, I'm not going to say that specific year because he could drive more than 1 year. So the specific amount of days that user has driven in general. Since we already declared that, we can call that same variable here, but we're going to change its value, and we're going to do user-driven days. So we're going to equate user-driven days to itself, but we're going to do some calculations as well. We're going to do subtract. We're going to do driving or driven years. Driven years. Yeah. Multiply that by 365. And then within it, we'll do plus, do driven weeks, and then we'll multiply that by 7. And I will explain why I did that. So let's go back to the example of 16, because we're saying 16 is the amount of, I'm going to comment this out. 16 is the amount of days we're saying that the user inputted. We're subtracting 16 by the driven years. So say he drove, 16 is less than 365, so driven years would equal 0. Because 16 days is what, 2 weeks. It's not more than a year. So we would get 0 times 365, and I'll put that in parentheses, and that's going to be 0. But I'll hold off on that for now. So driven weeks, we know that's 2 weeks, and we're going to multiply that by 7. Okay, so this would equate to 16 minus 14. Yep, makes sense, because 14 equals the 2 weeks. And we already get the result of 2 weeks from driven weeks, so we don't want to include the weeks anymore. So that's why we're doing the subtraction here. That's going to give us the leftover days. So 16 minus 14 is 2, because there's 2 leftover days, and we just want the leftover days. So it's kind of like, you do have to think about it a little bit just to figure out how you're going to do the math to get the leftover days, but that's basically how you would do it. So now that we did all the calculations, now we just have to print everything out. So we do print, and I believe they have the format of what they want you to write. We could do print, and we just basically copy and paste this. So days you have been driving, and for this we can do it's just colon, and then next line, years uppercase, and we'll do driven years. And then for this, we'll do driven, no, this will be weeks. And then we'll do, actually I'm forgetting commas. That's for, we'll do driven weeks. And then for this, we'll do days. Do comma right there. And then we'll do user-driven days. And now, if we print this out, main.py, how many days? We'll do 16 because we've been using that as our example. I should have done a space here. Let me run that again. I don't... Okay, so this line of code is the first code the user is going to get. I just put a space at the between the end of the parentheses, or the end of the closing quotations and the question mark. That way, when the user does get that question, when they enter in their number, there's a little space in between. It's not all bunched together. It just looks nicer. So now we'll do 16. It doesn't change the output of any of the calculations we did. It's just like cosmetic. So days you have been driving. 16 days is less than a year, so years would be 0. 16 days is more than a week. It's actually 2 weeks, so we get 2 weeks. But 16 days is a little bit more than 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks and 2 days, so we do get 2 days down here. And that's all they're asking for. So that's that lab. It's a little bit more thinking, more math, but they just want you to practice arithmetic operators, like different ones, multiplication, the modulus, the floor division, and yeah, that's basically it. So that's that. Let's go to, I believe, 2.2a. So 2.2a, start assignment. Just wait for it to open. Okay, so I'll wait for this to load. Get rid of all of that. So the scenario is you will create a Python script that will take user input and convert lowercase letters in the string into uppercase letters, depending on the user input. Write a script that converts the count amount of letters starting from the end of a given word to uppercase. The script should take the word as a string, specify the count amount of letters to convert as an integer input. From the user, you could assume that the count variable will be positive. A lot there. Okay, so let's do step by step. So open the file. On the first line, request the string to convert from the user. So they want you to basically, they want you to basically ask the user for input. So we have to create a variable, and we have to format it so that it takes user input. So we could do user input equal to input, the input function, or the input method. No, input function. Yeah. And we will write our string here because we need to tell the user what they have to input. So we could do, what do they want? User input, string of letters. Let's do, write a script and convert the count amount of letters. Oh, they just want a word, they don't want a whole string. Okay, so we could do word to be changed to enter a word. We do enter a word. I think that's clear enough because we want the user to enter a word, and then we're going to change the word itself from enter a word in uppercase. Should we do enter a word in uppercase? Word to be converted. No, enter a word in lowercase. Let's do enter a word in lowercase. That way that the user doesn't enter in a full word in uppercase. That way we can change it. So let's do enter a word in lowercase, period. I think that's good. So now we have to write a script that converts the count amount of letters starting from the end of a given word to uppercase. Okay. So now we'll do count. Do int input. How many letters should we make lowercase from word? Yeah. So we used the same syntax in the previous lab. This is basically just saying we want the user to give us input through the terminal, but we also just want the user to input a integer number. That way they don't return a string, because we just want a number here. That's why we're using the int, and the input is for user input. So that's that. Next line. So, and I assigned it the variable count because whatever the user enters in there is going to be the number of letters we're going to change from the first input of this. Because the user is going to enter in a word, then here the user is going to enter in a number, and that number is going to affect this. But we'll get to that. So let's see. I believe that was step 2 and 3. So step 4. Next, get the start of the string. So we don't know exactly how long the string is going to be, but they want us to enter in they want us to separate the string, just so that we could use that later. So the way we cut a string up is we have to first declare a variable that would represent the beginning of the string. So let's do first half. We could do start of user input, and then we could assign that user input, because the start of the user input has to include obviously the user input. We don't know what it is yet, that's why we're calling the variable here. But within it, we do have to add some different stuff just so that we can, because right now if we just did start of user input, which is a new variable, and we assign it user input, it's just going to return the whole word that the user put, and we don't want the whole thing. We just want half, and we want the first half of it. So for that we have to slice the word, or slice the string. So to do that we do use the colon operator. So first we're going to do those brackets, we're going to do the colon. If we do the colon in front, it's going to slice the first part of it's going to start slicing from the beginning. What I mean by that is that, so well, I'll show you. Let's do colon. That's going to represent slicing. Then we'll do length, and the reason we do length is because we don't know how long the word is. We need a length allows us to count the amount of characters in the word, but we need to tell it to count the characters of a specific word. Even though we called user input here, we also have to call it within the length function, or else it's not going to know. So we did slice the length of user input, and that's that. And then we're going to subtract that by count, and you'll see why. When we do length and then we pass an argument within it, this being user input, length is going to return the number of characters in that word. So say we had the word hello, it would return the integer 5, and then it would be 5 minus count, and count, say we did the user inputted 2, so it would be 5 minus 2, which would be 3, and now and that's just from length all the way to count. It gives us 3. Now we get the slicing operator that I put at the very beginning, that colon. So what this really is reading is, it's reading as this. So I'm going to do a comment here. So basically what I wrote on line 5 is this. I wrote start of user input equals user input slice 3. That's basically what this is representing. But I can't just write 3 because I don't know what count is. Count being the amount of, because that's from user input, and I don't know how long the word is itself. So that's why I'm including these variables in here, because they're stuff that we don't know yet. So we can't calculate ourselves in the code. We have to use variables to represent these unknown numbers. But this is what the computer's actually gonna do once it has those numbers and does the calculations of 5 minus 2, which would be 3. So this colon 3 means that, say our word was hello, bring hello all the way over here. So if the colon is on the left hand side, then it's just going to take the first amount of letters. So because it's 3, it would take H. So it's going to take H, it's going to take E, and it's going to take L. And everything after that, it doesn't care about. So like, think of it like the colon, think of it like, I guess, if you have a number here, like say this was 4, right? So if this was 4, it would count H, E, L, L, and then because the colon's on the left side, that means H, E, L, L, everything that we just counted from that point on to the left, we're going to keep. Everything after it, we don't care about. It gets deleted. It gets sliced. But in this case, we did 5 minus 2, which was 3, which means it only takes H, E, L, L, which is good because that's what we want. We want the start of whatever word the user inputs. We don't know if it's hello, it could be something else, but this is just to show what my line actually means. We're going to use the same concept for the end of the word, which I'm assuming they also want. Yeah, then get the end of the string. So we have to create another variable and do end of user input. And it's the same thing. So we do have to call the user input. We have to do the bracket, but notice that we put the colon in front here, the slicing colon. We don't want to slice the same way we sliced for the start, so we have to move this colon to the end. So that's why I'm going to do length, user input minus count. There. Whoops. Do not want to put everything in that bracket. User input, close that, minus count, and now we do that. Okay, so it's basically the same thing I wrote on line 5, but I moved my slice operator from left all the way on the left all the way on the right. That means it's going to slice the other way, and I'll show you that as well. Line 10, 9, 10, and 11, that's not included in your final code. That's just comments that I'm kind of trying to use to explain to you the concept of this line. So 7, so now that we have the slice operator on the other end, it's going to give us the same number of 3 if the word was hello and the count that the user inputted was 2, then it would give us the number 3, but now it's 3 colon. So 3 colon basically means we're still going to count from left to right 3 letters, so H, E, L. So the computer counts all the way to L, and then it says, okay, you want us to slice everything, you only want us to include everything after those 3 letters, so it'd be LO. Everything before the computer deletes. So line 7 would give us LO. That's basically that. It slices, but the other way. And now the last thing they want us to do, now that we got line 5 and line 7 are giving us the first half and the last half of that specific word. We don't know what the word is, but it's going to slice it accordingly. So line 9, then concatenate the first and last part back together. So we're putting the word back together. I know it seems like we just did a lot of work for nothing, but we're going to put it back together. But with the last substring transformed. There's a reason we split it, because now we're going to change part of that word to uppercase. And we couldn't do that unless we split the word. So now we're going to do just that. It's a print statement, and we're going to do start of user input plus end of user input, but we're going to do upper. And upper is just going to say return the user input, but make every character in that word uppercase. And now we'll see the results. So we go to Python 3, go to main.py. Okay, so enter a word in lowercase. I don't like this. I use a colon. Technically that's right, but it's just for visual cosmetic. Yeah, I like it when it's like that. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna do a space. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna write this again. Yes, much better. Okay. So let's do our example again. Let's do hello. Let's do 2. And okay, so notice that it outputs HEL, which is what line 5 is giving us, the first part of the word, but it's not changing it. It's just returning HEL. Now, the end of the word, which we know is LO, is also printed out, but the form of the word, the form of the case sensitivity changed. It went from a lowercase to both uppercase. And that's because of this upper right here. And that's basically it. That's all they want you to do. They want you to practice how you can manipulate strings. And manipulate meaning take a string, rip it apart. You can rip it into 3 parts if you want. But they want you to rip it into 2, and then they want you to change the case sensitivity of that word. That's basically all this lab is. So that's that. And then let's go to, I believe, the last lab, 2.2b, manipulating strings. So this lab, just wait for it to open. Okay. So scenario, you want to write a Python script. Oh, get rid of that. We'll get to it. Okay. So scenario, you want to write a Python script that takes a string and counts the occurrence of that specified word. The aim, write a script that counts and displays the number of occurrences of a specified word in a given excerpt. The script should request 2 input values from the user, that is, the excerpt and the word to search for. You can assume that the word will not occur as a substring, in other words. Okay, so steps for completion, go to your main.py file. Take in user input for the sentence and the substring. So we need user input. Let's read the first sentence again. So write a script that counts and displays the number of occurrences of a specified word in a given excerpt. The script should request 2 input. Okay, so we have 2 input values that are going to be from a user, not from us. And the first is going to be like an excerpt, so like a sentence. The second is going to be requesting the user to give us a word that they want to search for within the sentence. They kind of worded it a little bit weird, but that's the gist of it. So the first one's going to be, I'm going to call it user input, because that's just going to be my name of my variable, because the user's inputting. We could do user input, user sentence, because both are user input, but one's a sentence, one is word. So user sentence and then user word. Okay, those will be the 2 variables I'm going to call. The first is user sentence. Once again, because it's coming from the user, we use the input. the input method, and then within it we're gonna give the user instructions on what to write. Please write a sentence, and then period, and actually colon space, and then user word we will do once again input, and then we'll do please enter, or what word should we search for? Question mark. Space. Okay, I think that's good, because they're asking us two input values from a user. One that is the excerpt and the word to search for. So the first one, write a sentence. Second one, what word should we search for? Okay. You can assume that the word will not occur as a substring in other words. Okay. So next, sanitize and format the input by removing the white space and converting it to lowercase. Okay, so we're manipulating the string, like the input of the string. We don't know what the value of these variables are yet, but they want us to. They don't care. They want us to still manipulate the value, whatever the value will be. So we're gonna set this equal to itself, just like we did in the last activity, but we're gonna use different functions or different methods. The first will be removing the white spaces and converting it to lowercase. So we'll do the lower again, and then the lower open parenthesis, close parenthesis just interprets that entire user input, whatever the value is, and lowercases every letter in that word. That's all it does. So to use this, you just do whatever the value is, point, lower, open parenthesis, close parenthesis. We're going to do another point right after that, no spaces in between any of this, and we're going to do strip, open parenthesis, close parenthesis. What this does is, because we don't know what this string value is, if the user, say, when he's entering in his sentence, or when he or she is entering in the sentence, they do unnecessary spaces in between. What strip does is it removes all those white spaces, and it's basically like cleaning it up for the computer to better interpret it. So that's what strip does. So now we've lowercased whatever the value of a user sentence is, and we've also removed any unnecessary white spaces in the value. So that's for user sentence. We're going to do the same thing for user word. So we'll do user word, do lower, and then, whoops, also do strip. Okay, so that's that. Now they want us to count the occurrences of the substring. The substring being user word. So to do that, we have to create another variable that will do occurrences, but we'll call it count. Or we can call it number of times, or we can do occurrences of word. I think that's better. Obviously, you don't have to make your variables that long. It just makes more sense for me. So I do occurrences of word, meaning how many times will user word show up in user sentence? Because that's really what we're trying to figure out. So that's why I did occurrences of word. So for this, we're going to set this equal to the string, which is user sentence. And then we're going to do point, and then we'll do user word, and then we'll do point count user word. Okay, so with this we're saying occurrences of word equals whatever the user wrote up here in their sentence, point count how many times this count method is going to count how many times this word, user word, on line 3 is used in user sentence. That's so count is going to count how many times user word is used in user sentence, which is why we're doing point count of user sentence, if that makes sense. So what line 8 is basically saying is if our sentence was, well, no, it's saying occurrences of word equals, and let's say our sentence is let's say user sentence is, this is like a fictional scenario. User sentence, the user entered in hello world, right? And then the user word was hello. Okay? So we can ignore line 5 and 6 right now. We're just going to focus on line 8. So line 8 is occurrences of word. So occurrences of word equals hello world. And then this count method is basically saying, okay, take hello world and count how many times hello is used in hello world. Because, and that's, it says that because I do count, open parentheses, and I'm passing an argument of user word, and user word equals, in this fictional scenario, hello. So occurrences of word equals how many times is the word hello used in hello world. And obviously we know that to be 1, so occurrences of word is actually being equal to 1 if the user were to have entered in hello world for user sentence and hello for user word. I hope that kind of clears it up. It's a little bit confusing. So now that we did all of that, now we have to print the results. So for that, we just do a print statement, and I believe there was specific syntax for that. So no, there's not. No, there is. Yeah, so there are, okay, so they want us to name it like this. I thought so. So they want us to do a print statement. We're going to use F, and then we're going to just open up our quotation marks, and then we're going to do there are, right? And then here we'll do there are it's word. 3 occurrences of word. There are occurrences of, we'll do this, and then we'll do user word. And why did it close this? There are user word in that sentence. close. Occurrences. I spelled occurrences wrong. Three occurrences of word in. Okay. So these brackets, the reason we use them is because we're including a variable within a string here, but we're not calling multiple strings. This is all one string, but to input variables within a string without ending the string itself, we do use those brackets. It's the curly brackets around whatever variable we're using. And like all the string itself, I'm just copying what it's saying in the example of the output that they want you to produce. So under workspace, if you go down 3 lines, that's the output that they want. That being like there are, and then 3 is the number of occurrences. So that's why I'm calling the variable of occurrences of word. And then it's no, there are 3 occurrences, so I'm writing occurrences of, and then they say because, and because is the user word in that specific example. So for that, I'm putting the variable of user word right here, and then in the sentence, and then that should be it. So let's make sure we can, if you're gonna do the whole one long string but insert variables within it with curly brackets, you do have to preface your string with the F. So that's why I included the F here. The F goes inside the parentheses, but if you don't have the F, it's not going to work. So it's important to do the F. So I believe that's it. So let's print out the output that they want. I know some people are having trouble with the lab not accepting it, so let's see if it accepts mine. So let's do let's do Python 3 main.py. Let's do hello world. No, they want us to do exactly what they asked for. You cannot end a sentence with because. I can't. Oh, I pressed enter, didn't I? Okay. Let's try that again. You cannot end a sentence with because is a conjunction, period. And they want us to look for because. Okay, there are 3 occurrences of because in the sentence. I'm basically just writing what the output in figure 2.11 is showing, at least the first one. So now let's do the little check mark to see if it accepts at least one of the acceptable outputs. Okay, it is taking it. So I'll do one more just to double check. So I'm going to run the entire program again. So Python 3 main.py. And now I'm going to do the second example of that is not, period is that it is, period. And we're looking for that. So there are 5 occurrences of that in the sentence, and then I'll do the last one just because we're basically just to finish it off. So she said is said, but I said, no, said is said. And then I'm assuming it's said. Yeah, there are 8 occurrences, and we'll check to see if it's correct. It's taking its time. Okay, it is. So if you guys are getting like errors, do try to see if you guys are including, maybe you guys are missing the F at the very beginning. Like I said, if you're going to do the whole one long string but insert your variables within your string while maintaining the integrity of the variable, you do have to preface the string with the f, and you also have to include the curly brackets around the variable. Aside from that, line 8 I kind of explained. Line 5 and 6 are just making sure whatever the user inputted, in my case it's hello world, that it's changed to lowercase if it's not already lowercase, and also it removes any white spaces, like any extra white spaces that are in there. Line 2 and 3 is just asking the user to input a sentence and then search to declare a word within that sentence that we should search for. And that's really it. That's really this activity. And so I believe that is the last activity. They are a little bit longer and they do take a little bit more thinking as to how to complete it. But I hope this was helpful. If you guys have any questions, you guys could always reach out, but I would say try to follow along in the video. I do try to break it down the way I would approach it. But yeah, that's week 2. So I will see you guys next week.